Now this is an interesting one. The 5-Year Glorious Plan, issues 11 through 14. The boys head to Moscow, as there has been an incident where Soup's heads are being blown off. And if that sounds familiar, forget about it. It has nothing to do with what happens in the show. This isn't anything they've ever seen before, so they want a look at the body, which is in Moscow, and there we are introduced to various other players in the universe. A pint-sized gangster called Little Nina, and show watchers, this is where her name actually comes from, and why it makes sense. Stillwell, who will be getting his own section, and Vas, a Russian friend of Billy and the boys with communist sympathies, also known as Love Sausage, who is an actual character in the comics. I got a comment on my first video essentially calling me a hypocrite because I was mad about this when the comic has punchline characters that the show, in my opinion, tries to turn into actual characters. But I'm here to say no. There is a big difference between taking a joke and making a person out of it, expanding on it, giving it more dimension than the original creation, than taking a fully formed character with thoughts, feelings, opinions, and a purpose and making a joke out of them. One is an elevation, the other is a diminishment. And I'll also be touching later on how the show just really gave no relationship between the boys and tried to cover up their lack of relationship building with shallow comments that came from nowhere and led nowhere. Whereas in the comic, the boys are actually a real team who actually interact like they're actual people who actually spend time together. This extends to Vas as well. Anyway, back to the story. Assassinations are attempted on the boys, and they interrogate a man who tells them that Little Nina hired him to kill them on behalf of some American guy who really wants them dead. And after some investigation, they find out that it is Vought American that is after them. This is the point in the comic where the first shot is fired between the two. Because, obviously, if a political, corporate, or otherwise powerful entity has a person of interest to them that they want dead, several degrees of separation is a vital necessity to getting that done in order to avoid massive political and corporate fallout.
Palpatine sends a man, who sends a man, who sends a shapeshifter, who sends a robot, who sends bugs to go kill Padme.
But I don't think anybody needs me to tell them that. And once again, Ennis gives us in plain English exactly what he thinks. He explains how this is good for Nina as she gets to come out looking like the hero and install herself in the seat of power, ousting the government that is widely known as corrupt anyway. Billy is about to tell them how when he and all the boys bar Huey and Vas suddenly drop. This is the second assassination attempt, and the boys are alive due to the compound V in their system, and both Huey and Vas are unaffected because of the brake fluid alcohol they partook in earlier in the story. They leave the boys in Terror's capable hands and go off to find Nina and stop whatever carnage she's about to unleash with a little bit of Dutch, or rather, Russian courage. After a valiant effort, Vas is incapacitated. Must you? Must you? So Huey is left to deal with the assassins alone.
He also has more of an opportunity to be brave.
Huey figures out that Nina's getting ready to flee the country.
Huey on the TV show is able to display a lot more ingenuity.
And they take off after her only to be too late. Only then to find out that Billy was a couple of steps ahead of them and planned for such an eventuality. And we end with a poignant musing from Vas, who finds out that his communist hero was in league with Nina all along. And I have to say, I think Vas is my second favourite character. Like Huey, you get the impression that he is a really good person, whereas Huey cares more about the individual. Vas looks outward towards the greater good, even though he has his own opinion on what that is and what it looks like. Billy blows up the Soups, they say goodbye to Vas, and the mysterious Vought American businessman is still an unknown yet obviously dangerous player. Whereas the first story, was about introducing us to the boys and the world, and the second story was more about seeing the boys on the job and how the power trickles down and affects ordinary people. This one is more about fleshing out the world and intertwining the national, international, and corporate politics into the story. Something the show spectacularly fails at, simperingly, creepily, bootlickingly, but put a pin in that. Okay, so now we've set up the world, the boys, and introduced most of the opposing players, we get a good look at the other important side of the story.